Hi, this is Carolina. Today I'm going to show you how to sew a scrunchie. These are the materials that we are going to need. First thing you are going to do is you're going to fold your fabric with the right sides facing each other. Okay, we want our ugly side to be facing out. Okay, and that way when we cut it, it's easier just to fold it that way. Okay, just to keep it that way. So I'm trying to save as much fabric as possible. And this is why I keep adjusting my fabric until I'm able to fit my pattern, okay? That is going to be folded. And you got to make sure that those arrows are facing where the fabric is going to fold, okay? Not to waste too much fabric, okay? And in this case, it doesn't matter in which direction you fold it because this fabric doesn't stretch, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pin it. I'm going to pin my pattern to the fabric. That way it's easier when I'm cutting it, okay? Since this fabric is very thin, it's going to try to move. So by pinning it, it's going to help me cut it. And as you can see, I put a pin on every corner. And I'm going to grab my fabric scissors and I'm going to cut all the way around, okay? And I'm lifting it a little bit so it's easier for me to cut through it. And I'm going to go all the way around to cut around my pattern. The other way you can do it too is you can trace your pattern with chalk and then remove the pattern and cut it, right? But I think it's easier if you keep your pattern, that way you know where to cut. In this case, because this fabric is really thin. And this is how we want to cut our pattern. Okay, at the end, you are going to end up with something like this, okay? I can remove my pins at this point. And this is how my scrunchie is going to look like when it's flat before we sew it. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pin the right side, which is the opening. And you're pretty much going to end up with something like this, okay? Okay, it's going to look like this. I use an overlock machine to stitch that section. And I'm going to fold half of it. And I'm going to kind of tuck it in, okay? Because we want to stitch the outer seam. And as you can see, we're going to be stitching on the outer side of the fabric, okay? On the ugly side. I'm going to pin it. Just enough for me to be able to hold the fabric when I bring it to the sewing machine, okay? And I'm going to leave a section like about 1 inch. It's going to be open. I'm not going to stitch there. That way we can flip our scrunchie, okay? We can turn it the right side out. And as you can see, I keep tucking the interior of the scrunchie, and I'm going to continue all the way down until I can no longer fold anything inside, okay? And then we're going to bring it to the overlock machine. If you don't have an overlock machine, you can use a single needle as well. Remember, this one has a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to continue pinning. And this is how it's going to look, okay? So I'm going to bring it to the overlock machine. And I'm just going to sew along the edge. I know my stitching here is going to be 3/8 of an inch, okay? And I'm using my fingers to keep the interior of the fabric in, okay? I don't want to stitch the other side that is inside the fold that I have right here. And as you can see, I'm going to keep pulling from the inside, okay, to continue sewing, okay? I think my pin got stuck, but I'm going to continue sewing. As you can see, I had to make some adjustments, but I'm going to keep folding the interior and keep sewing until I get to almost towards the end, okay? And you will see my section where it's already stitched. I'm using my finger to hold it, and as you can see, this is the strings hanging from my previous stitching. And like I said, I'm going to leave about 1 inch open, okay? So I'm going to continue sewing until I get to the pin, okay? And you don't have to use a pin, but I'm using it so it's easier for me to remember not to stitch past that point, okay? And I'm going to remove it right before I get to the point. So once I do that, I'm going to trim the excess threads. And I'm going to pull the inside out, okay? I want my scrunchie to be right side out. And if you have anything that you need to cut, you can trim it at this point. But see, I'm using my hand to flip it over, okay? And this is how it's going to look, right? Easy, right? Now I'm going to bring you here, and remember, we are using 1/4 of an inch elastic, okay? We want to cut about 8 inches. Okay, and I'm going to use a safety pin because that's how we want to pass my elastic through the scrunchie, okay? What I like doing is I like to fold one side and pass my safety pin through it. That way I know it's not going to come off. And I'm going to find the opening from the scrunchie, and that's where I want to pass my safety pin. And I'm going to use my fingers to bring in the fabric, okay? And the other thing I do is I hold the end of the elastic, that way it doesn't go inside. And see, I'm using my other fingers to keep pushing the fabric through and bringing my pin all the way throughout the opening. Once I get to the other opening, you'll see the safety pin, okay? And see, I'm still holding the elastic with my pinky finger. Okay, once I get to this point, I pull my safety pin, okay? And as you can see, now I got both ends. So I'm gonna remove my safety pin, okay? And I like to put them facing each other, both of my ends. And I'm gonna put a pin because I'm gonna be stitching there, okay? We wanna bring it to the single needle, we wanna stitch on top of it. We're gonna stitch across from it right here, okay? So now that I'm in the machine, I'm gonna go over a couple of times. I'm gonna back stitch just to make sure I have a couple of stitches on top of these overlapping elastic ends, and then I can trim the excess threads. And that's pretty much almost everything that we have to do. Now I need to find my opening, okay? And I'm gonna use my fingers to kind of make it flat. And I'm gonna pin the beginning and the end. That way I know where I need to stitch. And I know this fabric is kind of hard to see because it's kind of fuzzy and it's hard to see the stitching, but if you have a solid color, you will see where you will be stitching. And like I said, I put 2 pins as my guides, and I'm gonna be stitching right here, okay? Once I stitch at the bottom, I cut the excess thread, remove my pins, and I just do like a little check of my elastic to make sure it's not gonna break, okay? And once I know it's good, make sure it's not twisted, and then we're pretty much done with my scrunchie. This is how it looks once it's completed. You can use this pattern to create different scrunchies with other fabrics. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. Thank you.